Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I wanted to make this video as information packed as possible just because I've been gone for so long. So I'm making this video right now for everybody who is interested in buying their first investment property. I recently just got my real estate license, so I'm working with a lot of first-time buyers and first-time homeowners, and a lot of people are leaning towards buying their first investment property over their first primary home. And no shade or no shame in that process at all. That's honestly what I did too. I was looking at buying my primary residence, but it wasn't as exciting to me as the appeal of like becoming an investor and doing real estate investing and getting into that, just because I do have like a construction and accounting background, so I was really interested in that side of the business. But yeah, so I'm making this video basically so you can learn from my mistakes and don't have to repeat the same thing that I did on my first investment property. I did buy a BRRR. Well, I tried to do the BRRR method, and these are some things that I learned. What does the BRRR stand for? Buy, rent, rehab, refinance? Yeah. So, okay. First of all, the down payment, I put around 20 to 25% down. I think it was around 20%. I did go with a conventional loan, and I used 0% interest credit cards to fund the entire renovation process. I did go out of state for this one. Why did I go out of state? I was really interested in just the experience and the process. I honestly thought it would be easier to scale out of state, and don't get me wrong, it's definitely easier, but you still need to know what you're doing no matter where you go. Anyways, okay, so I did get screwed over by a few contractors, and these are some things that I learned as well. Okay, so if I would have known these things before going into the project, then I would have kept scaling. And if you're just buying real estate just for the simple fact of making money, like buying the dip and then getting out of it, that is when you can have a lot of errors and things don't always go according to plan. But if you're buying real estate for the long haul, to buy it and stay in it for 30 years plus, you're always gonna win. Okay, so yeah, basically the purchase price. I did go with a conventional loan. It was an investor loan. I didn't do anything crazy where I said I'm gonna live there and didn't live there, because I'm not trying to be sued by anybody. What else? Oh yeah. Okay, so if I would have known this first, I would have kept scaling. So I went to the Midwest, specifically Ohio, and it's a lot easier to put a down payment there versus more expensive places like California, Texas, Florida, Arizona, or New York, Colorado, North Carolina. This is just, you know, a lot cheaper place to get started. Okay, so I could have kept scaling if I would have known for the down payment. Once you're in contract to purchase the property, this happens to a lot of people more often than you would expect. When people are getting qualified for a hard money loan, a hard money loan is specifically for fix and flip projects where you're gonna resell the property or refinance quickly, like under a year. You just need to manage your finances correctly. My house did take under a year, so definitely possible, but a lot of people mess up when they are saving money for the down payment and they set aside this much money, like say they cover 90% of the LTV. The LTV is not the same as your purchase price. This is the appraised value, so it can vary based on what the appraisal comes back at. If you want more information on the appraisal, you can skip to that part in this video. I will get into that later. Anyways, so the down payment, a lot of times if it is an investor's home that you're buying and they just want to sell it quickly and be done with it, a lot of times investors will actually offer to put money down to the down payment. And I feel really dumb because this happened to me. I was in contract and an investor said, oh, I will give you some money for the down payment if you want to move forward with this loan. But unfortunately I was too afraid. I chickened out, and I am so mad at myself for doing that, because that would have been the perfect way to scale, especially if they know you're renovating the place and gonna refinance them out later in like, you know, 1 to 2 years. Then he was fine with it. So I don't know why I didn't move forward. But anyways, this is to say, never let anybody convince you not to do something, because just think about it. Do you really want to be in the same spot as all the people who didn't try and they were too afraid? Like, do you really want to stay in that spot? Like, 10 years down the line, if your life was exactly the same and you never took another risk, would you be okay with that? Like, no, you wouldn't. You would want to move forward and go accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish and move forward with your dreams. So just remember that. And also, Blackstone buys over 300 houses per year, so they never get cold feet. They always buy, they always go through. So if somebody's buying, why can't it be you? Anyways, basically, okay, so the way our society is set up, like, real estate goes up every single year. If you think about it, like, do they really build enough houses to create the population? What is it supposed to be? Like, for every one person, there's supposed to be 2 other people. So at that rate, I'm not sure there's enough housing to accommodate for all the new people. Like, the population grows year over year, and I don't think there's enough real estate to like sustainably house everybody, unless they're like mass producing like giant multifamily buildings. That's pretty much it. I think at this point, it's, what is it, cheaper to send your kid to college than it is to have a child enrolled in daycare. So it's not really like sustainable to even have kids at this point. But anyways, that's another subject we'll get into like another time, if even. Anyways, basically the way our society is set up is like real estate just gets paid off on its own. It's a great investment vehicle. So you get your mortgage, you pay it off in 30 years, and you sell your house, you gain a little bit of appreciation, and you have a great investment. And then you're able to, you know, save for your kids' college, retire, all that stuff. Okay, so yeah, the purchase price. Definitely, like, if you can find another investor, that can be so helpful. Especially if the owner wants to go in on you with the purchase price. That can be great if you're going to refinance in 1 to 2 years down the line. Okay, and then as for the renovations, I met some like really great contractors that I ended up working with. A few of them did like screw me over a little bit, but it was because I was still trying to create my own like interview process, hiring process. So I was like a little bit disorganized. So honestly, that's probably my fault more than anybody's fault. And it was probably just a lack of communication. So now I try to have a really good communication. But because the property that I purchased was out of state, if I was recommending somebody else to do a business out of state, like run their own fix and flip business, I would definitely advise you to work with a team that can do everything for you, like A through Z, because it was a lot of time and energy for me to spend working on this project. And I would spend all that time like calling them, like when they're on the way to the property, before the property, while they're there, like making sure we have a checklist of everything that needs to get done while they're there. And it can be a lot if you have a full-time job, or if you have just a lot of stuff going on. I want to say that much, because for every time you're spending checking in on somebody, that's time that you're spending away from like doing other things that you're working on, which definitely can take away from your schedule. I was just doing like a bookkeeping, accounting job at the time, and I was just going back to school. So I did that during that period. I found the tenant myself. I interviewed them remotely. You can work with a property management company, and that's something that I would do going forward. Basically, if I have any more properties, I'm definitely hiring a property manager, because it's a lot to deal with. But because I was doing like the renovations and finding a tenant, there was more than just managing like a turnkey property. I basically redid everything. I'm talking about the drywall, the painting, all the floors throughout the home, the electrical, added new washer dryer, added a new kitchen. We weren't going to do the kitchen, but I tried to put it on the market without redoing the kitchen, and I just didn't really get any interest in the property. So I redid the kitchen and found a tenant who we love. We did go through Section 8 and they were really easy to work with. So yeah. So as for the renovations, okay, so I kind of tried to hire a property manager a little too prematurely when we were done with the renovations. So I had to like replace the water heater a few times, and that wasn't fun. As for the contractors, I've met a few really good contractors who I still know and call to this day, and so thankful for them. Yeah, and then a few people where it was like my fault for the lack of communication, which I developed a really good strategy for working with them. And anyways, so I'm really hoping you guys can learn from my mistakes, and the work did take less than a year. I think it took around like 2 or 3 months. I did go back with the kitchen, and there was like a contractor didn't finish the job with the kitchen, so I had to have another contractor come out. Anyways, that's why I would recommend working with somebody that can do everything A through Z. Okay, also, the thing with contractors, if you go with a contracting company that has a ton of marketing, they're most likely going to have a really big overhead, and they are going to charge for that overhead in their fees, versus if you go with a contractor, kind of like a mom and pop business or person where they're like doing everything themselves and really hands-on, then that's where you get like the most customer service. There are some companies out there that have really good customer service with a big overhead, but in my experience, it was a little bit like playing a game of telephone, trying to figure out who was actually coming to the house to do the work. So I just found it easier for the entire construction to work with one GC who is very familiar with everything. Okay, that's besides the point. Anyways, back to my mistakes. Please, please, please learn from my mistakes. Do not do this. When I was evaluating my property and my budget and trying to organize all my expenses, you need a plan for everything. Like, you need a plan for the utilities, you need a plan for the mortgage payments, and you need to have a timeline, especially if you're going with a hard money loan. You do not want to run out of money with that hard money loan. That is going to be your downfall. And so I was using comparables for my ARV. I just literally looked on Zillow and I took the highest property that had a similar square feet, and I was like, that's a comparable, like all the way across town, and just any high value number. I was like, that's great. Like, this is a great idea. Like, who wouldn't do this? Yeah. But you do not want to do that. So I learned that the hard way. I did 3 appraisals, and so these are the mistakes I learned. So hopefully you don't have to make the same mistakes. And if you're doing a BRRR, an appraisal is essentially the last part of the BRRR, and it is super important for you to know. Yeah. So this is what I learned. Anyways, you want to take comparables which are on the same street as your property. You don't want to cross any major highways or any major freeways. That is going to affect the comparable, and they can mark it down. I also didn't know that if you find properties that fit into your criteria, you can go back to them and say, hey, these are some comparables that work for the area. If you don't like the comparables like a bank chose, for example, you can dispute it with your comparables that you believe are correct, but if they're not exactly the same for any reason, they can still adjust the value, and so you still may not be getting what you want. Yeah, so you want to make sure if it's the same bedroom and bathroom count, if it has 2 baths versus like a half bath, you want to take that into consideration, and also the basement, you do look at that too. They look for homes built in the same subdivision, in the same street. And they need to be sold within the same time frame, so around 6 months. So they can go back further and around 1 mile distance from your property. If there's no other comparables within 1 mile, sometimes they will go out to 5 miles. If it is more of a rural area, it just depends on your city and the area. You want to make sure it's the same. You want to make sure the home was built within the same 10-year period, and you want to make sure that it has the same square feet, around 200 plus or minus the same square feet of your property. And also the lot size. You want to pay attention to the lot size, and you want to make sure the lot size is within around the same amount. I believe it's, let me double check. The garage, you also want to make sure if it has a garage, you're using comparables that do have a garage versus ones that don't. They're going to add or subtract value based on that. They're also going to add or subtract value based on the floors, if you're using a 1-story house versus a 2-story house, and also if it has a pool versus not having a pool. That is something they pay attention to. I do want to say they take into consideration the construction, but I'm not exactly sure how much they look into the construction and how much you paid for. I don't think they really go into that at all. It's basically just on recent sale values in the area. So anyways, please do not make the same mistakes as me on your next BRRR or investment property. These are some things that I would take into consideration. Also, an appraisal is not the same thing as a CMA, which your real estate agent can put together for you. A CMA is a comparable market analysis of all recent sales, and it's a little bit more expansive. You never know when you put your house on the market to sell if it's gonna go for top dollar. It just depends on what the market looks like in your area. Sometimes people will be dying to get into that area and they will pay a little bit more if they have a neighbor who they just love and have to live next to. You never know. Selling your home is not the same thing as a bank appraisal. A bank appraisal is for refinance only. So if you are selling your home, sometimes you can get a little bit more than an appraisal. It is not guaranteed. It is dependent all on the market, and no real estate agent can guarantee the price you'll get. But if they know what they're doing, then your home should sell. So I am happy to announce that I am now working with investors. I recently started working on a project here in California with an investor. I left out of state because I was focused more on building like a full-time career out of real estate versus scaling out of state. If you want to do that, you need to buy at least 5 to 10 to 20 properties to do that like effectively, and that just was going to take way too long for me, which is why I stayed in my home state for my next project. Also, if you're interested in saving money and learning how to do this on your own, but you don't have any money for the down payment, you need to sign up to get into my course on off-market real estate. I will put a link below this video too. There is so many things to talk about. I literally am running out of time. I'm gonna have to update you on how my other project goes, and yeah, if you like this kind of content, leave a comment below. If there's something that you want to see more of, also leave a comment down below. And yeah, happy investing, guys. I hope everything works out for you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.